So anyways, that's my 5.3 so far. Hey everybody, back in the shop again today. Gonna unbag my 5.3, blow it all out again, even though I've had it bagged up. You know, you never know what gets in there. So I'm gonna blow it out, clean it up with some brake clean inside. And then I'll get my new bearings put in and my crank. And go ahead and take my main caps and my stud kit and go ahead and torque everything down. And then I'll start assembling pistons and rods, which are in these boxes here, and rings, and start getting this engine all thrown together. All right, so I got the crankshaft dropped in here. I got all new bearings. So I'm gonna go ahead and set up my main caps and bearings and get these main studs dropped in their holes and snugged up. And then anyways, I'll drop the caps on when I get the bearings in, and we'll torque everything to ARP's specs. I got all the main studs in and just snugged up, probably 15-20 foot-pounds, just so my gun went till he touched. I'm gonna start all these side bolts here. I'm gonna put sealant on them and I'm gonna lube up the threads as well. So I'll go ahead and get them in and lightly snugged up on both sides. And then I'll go ahead and go through the torque sequence. I believe it's 60, 50, 25, I don't remember, let me look. Looks like 20. So 60 on the inside, 50 on the outside, and then 20 on the side rail. So I'll go ahead and get them all lubed up and sealed with some black RTV and get them started, and then I'll start torquing. Like that, got all the studs all torqued up, side bolts in, sealed up and torqued. So now I'm just going to flip this thing over, actually probably do it vertical with number one side up. Start assembling pistons and rods, so then I can start slapping them in this thing, get them all torqued up and done. I already gapped all the rings, and I just had the machine shop balance everything. Actually, the rods and pistons were all equal, so they just had to do the same set of weights all the way through this and spin it and balance it out. See where they ground a little material off there and there. Thought I seen another spot or two. Yeah, right there. They took a little material off to balance this crank up for that. Nothing too crazy. So yeah, let's start slapping them things together. So for these pistons and rods, I did the Summit Racing setup here. And anyways, it's quite a process. I gotta go clamp these in my soft vise, loosen the bolts. They're all torqued down pretty tight. So I gotta loosen them. I gotta go ahead and slip the rod on the piston. It has spiral clips, and then install all the rings, which I already have pre-gapped. Then put bearings in, and then when I'm done with them, I'm gonna set them like this. So you'll see me bounce in and out of the camera, maybe. Depends on what I edit out. But I gotta go put each rod in my vise and go ahead and loosen up all these bolts, and then I'll start going through and installing them all. All these weigh the same. They weight checked everything, and the difference wasn't enough to even worry about changing the weight across on the crank. So everything's gonna balance out really nice. Anyways, I'll get to work on getting these all together. All right, I showed you 4 on video. Number 1 sitting over here. I just have it sitting in the hole. I'm gonna NASCAR through the rest of these without videoing. It's a slow, tedious process, and nobody wants to see me time lapse 8 pistons completely assembling them. But the hardest part about the whole deal is getting that little pin in, or the wrist pin retainer in. These spiral clips are just a bugger, but a little patience, they go right in. So I'm gonna NASCAR these out, and then at the end, you'll see me knocking in pistons. All right, I got all the pistons on the rods. Now I'm gonna oil up my cylinders. And I'm gonna go ahead and start knocking them in, top to bottom, getting them all bolted up. I got bearings in them, so I'll just put a little lube on them after I get them. As I'm dropping in the top, I'll lube the top and then I'll lube the bottom as I'm bolting up. So I'll go ahead and knock these things in. Alright, I got all the pistons and rods in, so now I'm going to run through and torque them. I believe it's 82 foot-pounds in 3 steps, so these are the LS Pro Series rods, ARP bolts, so I'll go ahead and set up my torque wrench. Alright, everything's torqued up. So I'm going to step back here and put in my oil rail plug and change the seal on the back cover gasket. Get that new seal put in, put the new gasket on here, and bolt this rear cover on. Alright, I got my rear cover, a couple bolts here started through the gasket. I'm going to go ahead and pop it on here on the back and get her all cinched down. Rear cover's on, new gasket. I'm gonna stand this thing up on end, and I'm probably just gonna bag it up for tonight. It's pretty dark out and pretty late. I think it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock. So I'm just gonna call it a wrap for tonight, and I'll be back at this thing in the morning. Back in the shop today, I went ahead and pulled the bag off and yanked this gear off and put my double roller timing gear on. This one's from Summit, and it has the timing adjustments on it. I am putting it just on the, well, it's 0, but it's right where that mark is, roughly. Well, it's actually here, but anyways, I got it zeroed out. I'm gonna drop my cam in, retaining plate, and then the gear and the chain. And later I'll indicate it in, make sure it's set for what the cam should be at. And then I'll put the oil pump on and the cover. So anyways, I'll get to dropping the cam in and take off from there. the camshaft in. I did rotate it a little bit so markings aren't 100% lined up. If I spun it back, it would. But anyways, yeah, I got the cam in and set into place and timed. So I did put some lube on the chain and the gears. So start up, there's a little bit of something there. I'm gonna go ahead and put my oil pump on. I did get a Melling 102.95. It's a high pressure standard volume. I do have to run these spacers with this Melling, or with the double rolling chain for this Melling pump, or all pumps anyways. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that all mounted up, and I'm gonna use feeler gauges to center it up on the shaft as proper as I can, so I don't have premature failure. Got the oil pump on. Cool thing about this pump is it comes with the Copo spring, which is like 25 psi overstock. I believe this one has like 15 psi overstock, and then it comes with one that drops like 8 to 10 pounds lower if you want to lower your high pressure. Idle should be about the same as stock, but it'll be, you know, instead of 40 at idle, it'll be 55 or 40 at, you know, 2000 RPMs, it'll be 55 or something. And I guess the Copo puts out 25 psi over stock at full throttle or whatever. So anyways, I'm just gonna leave the red spring in this one and probably won't change it. And I'll get the front cover put on here and we'll start on the top end. So I got the front cover on. I didn't slide my factory dampener on to line up my crank seal, but I also didn't crush that gasket completely. I just snugged these bolts up, maybe 5-10 foot-pounds. When I do get my balancer, which I'm gonna order, I don't even know what brand yet, I haven't decided, but I'm gonna do an aftermarket balancer, something that is a little more trustworthy than the stock one. This will be spinning quite a few RPMs under boost. So when it comes time and it shows up, I'll loosen these, put it on, and then retighten them so the crank seal's centered on it. So now I'm gonna start with oiling all my lifters up, and then I'll drop them all into place, get the retainers in, and bolt it in, and then we can go ahead and put head gaskets on, my dowels back in, and get the head studs in and get it all assembled. I got all the lifters in, just roller hydraulics. So now I'm gonna go ahead and install all my head studs. All right, knocked out all these head studs. Just ran them in till they touched on the bottom, not super tight. So now I'm gonna go ahead and lay the head gaskets on here and slip some heads on. right, now that I got the heads all torqued on, I'm gonna go ahead and install these Brian Tooley push tubes. I got the bottom all lubed up, so I'll drop them all in place. All right, so I'm just gonna wipe this thing down. I do not have my rocker arm assemblies here yet. So I'm waiting on them. Once they show up, I can get everything bolted in here and the valve covers on. I mean, I'll rotate it over, make sure there's nothing hitting. And then also I'm waiting on this valley plate to show up. So anyways, that's my 5.3 so far. And we'll get her knocked out here soon. So that's the end of this video, and on the next one we'll be wrapping it up completely. Thanks.